You're like the perfect example of that being true and happening, because here you are, you've closed just shy of $1 million right now from someone who was doubting whether you could even do it.
Yeah, and I think something that also made it really easy is like, I think one of the biggest fears I had in going into closing was, like, do I really have that bulldozer in me to do this, right? The process and everything made it super easy. But in doing that and seeing what was possible, it made me want to adopt more of these bulldozer traits, assets, skills.
Sell the metal, sell the metal, sell the metal, sell the metal, sell the metal!
Hello, metal sellers who are out there watching this episode right now. I am blessed to have Kyle Morgan. I'm gonna say my favorite Canadian because Faris is a fucking fake Canadian. He might like live there, but the dude is definitely Arabic.
I'm as Canadian. I'm as Canadian as it gets.
You fucking you floated here from Canada on maple syrup clouds, right?
Yeah, 100%. The beaver told me the way.
The beaver told me the way. For any of you guys who have seen his face around in either the organic marketing group that we have or in our client list or whatever else that it is, Kyle is the man who sells all the people into a better opportunity in life if it's not me. What we're here to chat about today is kind of just like, I guess, the journey, working with us, becoming someone who's closed just shy of $1 million so far in the past year. In his first year selling as well, which I think is a pretty cool fucking accolade to take in and really run with, and knowing that you have about 60 days to go over that. Otherwise you're going to be maybe you can speak with Faris about that because you guys already have beef today, right? So,
Yeah.
But dude, it's cool to see you in Australia.
Yeah, man.
We obviously caught up. We've had a lot of fucking life experience that we've got to live together across different countries and different cities.
Yeah.
And we've run events together. We've been in different parts of our relationship. You were a client, then you joined the team, you did setting, then fucking closing. And I think through all of those different things, there was shifts, there was changes, there was differences, and there's different outcomes to speak to in all of them as well. But how are you liking Australia, bro?
Dude, Australia's great, man. A little bit of a time difference change, but I'm getting used to it now.
That's a thing.
Yeah, but nah, man, it's been great. The harbor, Sydney was pretty lit. The Opera House kind of puts Vancouver's harbor to shame, not gonna lie.
Yeah. That's the one that we went to, right?
Yeah.
And it's like in the city.
Yeah, it's like more downtown.
There's fucking
area.
nothing.
Yeah. No.
You can ride some like cool bicycles around, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Just a free-flowing conversation today more than anything else, right? I think that what I'd love to talk about is like, I guess, journey-wise, and then just personal shifts inside, because this might be really good for existing clients. It might be really good for people who aren't clients just now. And it may be good for existing team members, and may also be good for people who may want to eventually join the team one day as well, right? But I think if there is like one fucking category of beliefs that you hold that is really you, it's what it says down here, right? It's outwork bad days.
100%.
And if there is like one person that in the company fucking exudes that more than anyone, I absolutely think that it's you. And I think it's worth talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something that has kind of been built up over time, right? Because like me and you have known each other for like, I think a little bit over 3 years now, if you include the 11 months of follow-up it took you to get me on as a client, right? So for those of you that don't know, I was actually a past client of Chris's like 2 years ago. It took about almost a year of follow-up for him to get me on, just you know, past burns and everything like that as well, going through some shifts of jobs, but he eventually did it. He got me on, right? Business was at like 1 to 2K a month at the time. Took a couple months to get up to like that 5 to 10K a month. And the biggest shift where I think my journey to outworking bad days actually came from was about like 2 to 3 months in the program when we had that kind of, I know I bring this conversation that we had up a lot.
Yeah, I think I remember I was driving and I just randomly called you as I was on the way to something while I was in the car. And you were, I remember the reason I called. Did I ever tell you the reason why I called? Because I thought you were going to churn. I swear to God. I called because I thought you were going to churn. I'm like, I want to, like, Because that's just like, whenever I feel like someone is at risk, and usually risk is because they're kind of not in the best position or in doubt or whatever else it is, I just pick the phone up and call. And it wasn't like scheduled call, it wasn't anything, I just called.
Yeah, so, and I think at that time, like I was 2 to 3 months in the program, like I'd had some wins, like still more wins than anything I'd had in any other programs, but I'd still only really moved from like 1K to, I think I was like 3-4K a month, something like that. And I was kind of stuck in and around there, right? Where I was like selling more websites, had a few SEO deals, like first SEO deal I ever signed was with you guys, right? Like first monthly deals, but it was all websites and stuff before that. But at that point, I think what was happening was I was obviously still stuck at a job, using that as the excuse to why I couldn't hit the non-negotiables day in and day out. I was like, oh, well, I'm doing really good 2 or 3 days a week, but another 2 or 3 days a week, I'm falling short, right? And I think that was kind of causing me to be stuck. Cool, I'd move up to the 4K, but now I'm stuck here, right? And I was like, how do I really get to these, 10 to 15K months that are actually going to be the thing that, gets me the biggest impact, which at the time, and the reason I signed on was like to leave the job. Right. And I think the conversation we had at that point was, dude, you're doing well. You're a lot farther along than where you were, but now you're stuck here. And what I'm noticing is there's inconsistencies in, I'm not sure exactly how the conversation went, but it's like, dude, what's really holding you back? It's like, well, I'm having conversations one day, I'm not having calls the next, right? It's like, well, for every day that you don't hit the non-negotiables is another week that you have to spend at the job. Right, and that hit me really hard, but I was like, it started me on a train of thought where I was like, but what if I treated it like every day that I didn't do the things, that it was another month at the job, right? And that just like, this was when I started to have the mindset of outworking bad days kind of begun, right? Because when days were easy at the job and, I came home, got right on the DMs, like boom, it went smooth. But there's other days where, something happens on the way home, I got to stop and do something, or, I work an hour late, and it's easy to write off that, DM block or content block, whatever it is. But I just had to figure out a way to, even on the bad days, how do I make it work so I can start to outwork those?
I think that there was a big reason for you too, though, right? It was like, you knew the consequence of not doing something about it.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of knowing the consequence and not being offended by it, but motivated by it.
Yeah.
It was in your favor, right? You probably know a lot more about that now, seeing as that you actually sell, right? Because going into understanding what the risk for people not doing something is fucking huge. And me asking that question was just designed to help you like influence you to do the thing that you said you wanted to do, right? And I think that a lot of people don't have the privilege of being able to do that, because most people's normal daily average thinking is stuck in a loop of probably in many cases mediocrity, and they don't typically have the outside perspective to put the mirror in front of them that they didn't know they needed in the first place. And until they get that mirror, it's like business as usual, but what's once seen can't be unseen thereafter that. It's like the law of exposure. Once you've been exposed to the idea, you can't unsee that idea now, and you have to work out what to do from there. And that's why like consequence questions onto the stuff are also, it's all so fucking powerful. Like I did a call with that Justin Yang guy the other day, right? And like he messaged me after and goes like, bro, thank you so much for the hard conversation. No one's been willing to have that like with me forever. And I know for a fact I haven't been having that with myself.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because like honestly, like do you know, like there's like 2 or 3 things that kind of had me actually end up joining the program, right? I'm not sure if I've talked to you about this. Do you know exactly what those 2 or 3 things were? Like the first one was like...
it my accent? It had to be one of them, right? Like...
That might be the 4th one. We'll throw that in there, right? But like really, like I've been through some programs before, and like, a lot of it just didn't really feel like the most authentic content. Like some of them were really hardcore sales stuff, but others were like more like, religious based, but it felt like a softener for getting people into the program, right? But what really drew me to your content was the authenticity inside of the content, that you were like really being the person you were, but also like not being afraid to hurt people's feelings in the content, right? Not just on the sales call, right? That was another thing that really got me to see like where I'm at and how long I've been there. And that was a hard call in itself, right? But seeing that inside of the content and the authenticity there, leading that through to the sales call, and then having hard conversations as clients, right? It's 3 different areas of having hard conversations at different places inside of the client journey. Not what just got me into the program, but it's also what had me stay, right? Because like we had that conversation. I'm not sure if I was really thinking of sharing at that point, but like it prevented that for sure.
Totally, and I think that was the intent of me doing that, right? But I think what a lot of people are looking for when they come to work with someone like us is someone to believe in them in the days when they don't believe in themselves, which is where like selling through leadership can come in, and all the things that helps transfer belief into someone that the best days are going to be ahead, right? Like
100%.
Core value number 5 in our company, right? Which is like many people not intentionally end up being pessimistic around anything, but they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's not until perspective is shared from someone else, or belief can be installed from someone else, or just a new possibility is opened up that they get that. And you can keep going down the same road, and it just feels like it just feels like a dead end a lot of the time. And I think that happens a lot with people we speak to who are prospects as well.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I was heading towards when I was stuck at that 4K month mark.
Yeah.
But you seeing more of me that I could do more than I was saying or letting on that I could, and then building out the pathway with me on how would I be able to do that even on the bad days? How do I go about outworking those? That gave me I can do this. Chris believes I can, and here's how I can do it.
Well, and we still do that now.
And we still do that now.
Like we still do that now, right? I guess like moving forward from, running the owned offer, and it was circumstantial that you didn't want to keep running that offer because of a relationship that deteriorated and everything else as well, which is kind of sucks, but it is what it is. But kind of happy you did, just saying.
Anyone who's been through a bad partnership knows exactly where I'm coming from, right?
And that's why I used to say it so much in my content too. It's like most people shouldn't be in a business partnership. They should do the thing themselves, unless there's a legitimately strong reason and rationale, and it makes absolute and entire sense. It usually doesn't make the sense to do so. It's just usually. It comes from a place of unwillingness to do something as opposed to it being a wise decision.
Yeah, and I think the best partnership you can actually have is just a really strong team. Like what you've built here with me and Ferris, where we're on the team. We're not necessarily the business partnership at that CEO level, but we feel like partners within the business in our own realms of the business that we watch over, i.e. me being, setting sales. Right now we've got Chris more on the sales, and Ferris on the client delivery.
I also feel that it's don't talk yourself down on that either too, right? Like legit.
Yeah.
I think that what would be worth sort of leaning into too, right, is like you sort of joined us in the team, and I remember it was when Ferris came to Australia the first time. It might have been like October or November in 2022.
Yes.
I think it was. Yeah. And I was like, I was chatting to Jake, and all this shit's happening. I'm like, fuck, man, we need someone else on the team. I'm like, fuck, what about Kyle? Because you were going through that transitionary period and all this stuff as well. I'm just like, what about Kyle? Let's have the conversation at least anyway. And I don't know what the fuck was going through your head at that time. I genuinely have no clue. But you joined the team, which is really, 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 really cool. And there were a lot of different, obviously one, we've been through a lot of shit since then. But two, since then, you've closed over 100K in sales. You've probably been responsible for probably close to 1.5 or 1.6, if not or more, because when you were just setting as well.
Just setting, yeah.
Probably more, to be entirely honest. I didn't check that data point, which was a dickhead move on my part. But you've had different shifts. You've had different closers that we've worked with. You've had different setters that you've seen come and go. You've helped train some setters up. You've helped with so many of the client results, and the way we shift perspective within the people is using you as an example all the time as well. And I think what would be, sort of worth chatting about today too, right, is those shifts, what kind of who you have had needed to have been and become. And I guess what some of the hardest things were that helped you actively execute on those non-negotiables on a daily basis as well. Because I remember there was even a point in time where it was just I think it was the last hard redirect that we both had, and it was what was it based on? Preferences. There was a big thing where it was the preferences weren't getting met based on expectation that things should be easier than this or whatever else it is, right? And after we had that was about a 2-week conversation, but after that you've been fucking flawless.
There was a lot that went into that, right? Obviously I went through the whole, business dissolving thing, selling my share off, coming to join you guys. And I think that came down to just such a strong culture of metal selling that I had adopted just working for you guys as a client, where I was looking do I go with, my own business on my own? Do I, what do I do, right? And at the same time, I think at that point I was just I went through everything with the business. Like, I kind of just want to sell freaking metal now, right? Like, let's just do that together.
That wasn't even a thing then. That wasn't even a thing then, right?
But that was just like the culture of it, if that makes sense, right? Like,
the
that
essence.
led into, the essence of it that led into that, right? And I think one of the biggest shifts also came from going from setting to selling, right? Like, with setting, there's the whole thing with preferences, right? And I think a lot of that was, this should be easier to get yeses, right? There's, multiple time zones you're working with, right? So it's never easy. But I think the big lesson I learned through that is every time you're going through a really hard period where you're like, man, this should be easier, whatever it is, it's always on the other side of that something really good happens, right? Like, I think that was probably when we were in Vegas, like January, February, I was really going through that preference thing, right? And then on the other side of that was the end of February and March, where we had, at the time, a little bit over a year ago now, our biggest sales month ever.
For that period in time,
For that period of time, right?
Yeah.
But that was on the back side of having to outwork the hell out of some bad days.
Right.
And go through periods where I'm like, man, this should be easier. But I think it's during those periods where life tells you, like, what skills do you need to learn right now, right? Or what systems do you need to adopt, right? So if it's like dealing with time zones, like, how do I, like, even right now in Australia, I'm like dealing with the whole time zone thing where my effective part of the day is kind of been cut by a few hours. Well, what's the workaround, right? It's setting outbound the night before, right? So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing was the bigger shift that came after that with figuring out preferences was like, a lot of this one was more based around fears that I had going into selling.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to speak around this too, right? Because I think there's a lot to be spoken about from the setting side. Firstly, with I think it would be helpful to even dig into, what makes a good setter versus a bad setter, right? And this is for even clients or for people who are in our team right now or who want to join our team in future, right? It's like, because if I were to think about the poster boy in our company, it's you for setting for sure, right? Little cunt's a better setter than I am now, which is, I love it. I love it so much. But I think that the question to consider, or the insight to crave if you are a setter or if you are setting for yourself or if you're looking to have a setter, is like, what makes one good and how did you get good, if that makes sense?
So I think there's two parts that go into this, right? One, in order to be a good setter, the offer that you're going on to has to be ready for a good setter, right? So like having a verified process in place already to adopt that works for the offer already, that's verified to close.
So you mean like scripts?
Scripts, right? So you want to have scripts in place, processes. Cool. What are the most common objections that come up? How do we typically overcome those, right? And building out like a proper playbook to actually plug someone into based on what you see for your audience and your offer in particular, right? That's something that I had when I came in, right? That you'd worked on yourself.
Oh, yeah, myself for ages prior to that, for sure, yeah.
And then also with, other team and everything at the same time as well, right? So I think there's two parts. There's being a good setter, and then there's being set up to even have the possibility of being a good setter, right? Which is like, at least 50 leads a week to sift through on top of any outbound that's happening, having that verified process to plug into. But then we go into actually what makes a good setter, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to just tenacity, right? Like outworking bad days. If we're looking at
possibly following up,
that's kind of the next thing, man, right?
So here's a question that I've been like, not dying to ask, but like, I think what I think happens is people really underplay how much follow-up actually is involved in, not just in setting or sales, but just like, I would go as far to say that 90% of the day is follow-up.
Yeah. I think if you're looking at like the 80-20 rule of being a good setter, like that 20 is heavily made up of follow-up. And I think if a lot of people and a lot of offer owners looked at the way that we do follow-up, their jaws would probably hit the floor. You know what I mean? Like it's
the bulldozer follow-up method.
The bulldozer follow-up method, right? Like we have a literal SOP called the bulldozer follow-up method, right? And I think if people were to see that, right, like it is just so much farther beyond most people are willing to do, because it's not comfortable.
It's also, it's totally uncomfortable, right? Because you have to deal with the fear of, am I annoying? Am I this? Am I that? Because it's a lot, right? But I think it's also one of the biggest things that if you're looking at a new team member coming in, if it's not the scripting issue and they're not getting red dotted, the issue in their lack of success is lack of follow-up.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
In most cases. So like there's a million issues that come like within and around that. But the skill of it is really funny too, because it's not just following up with someone all day long or following up with 50 people all day long.
Yeah.
It's also following up with that same person in 4 months' time.
Yes. So being able to actually have an effective pipeline process at the same time as well, right? Knowing how long should I follow up with someone based on where they're at in the pipeline? What do those reach outs need to look like, right? And always, I think a big thing in follow up too that a lot of people miss, right? Like there's a time and place for the name question mark, right? And just bumping the message, right? But always positioning their next reply to be in their best interest.
That's fair. And I think the other one is like their reply is your responsibility.
100%.
Right? Like them responding is your responsibility, because I think if you really break it down, right? Like most people, like you and I have been sitting here for probably 15 minutes now. The amount of people that would have responded to both you and me in between this period of time already, we would be uncontactable right now. And if it's not a priority for us, good luck trying to get onto us because we're so busy doing something else. But if you follow up 2 or 3 times over the next couple of days, there's a high likelihood that you get my attention because I'm pissed off and like, I'm pissed off at myself for not responding.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
I think a lot of people shy away from follow-up just because they're afraid about pissing the person off. And I think if you're not following up enough to piss one in every few hundred people off, you're probably
getting blocked or whatever else it is.
Yeah, getting blocked, whatever else that it is. Like you're probably not following up enough. But if you really think about it, the amount of clients that you sign up from doing that way outweighs the one in every 300 or 400 that may end up blocking you or saying, hey, piss off. I've had people that have told me to piss off that 3 months later, they see a really good piece of content or follow up with them again, you know, with something that was relevant to what they were looking for last time we talked. Even though they said piss off, they've ended up signing up as a client.
You've been here for like a year and a half, right? So I'm just going to do a random thing. You've booked close to 1,000 appointments. Yeah. Right? Yeah. The reason why I share that, right, is because like this is like secrets from 1,000 appointments, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
There's that. And I think another one is like intent as well, right? If you aren't in there with the intent of trying to book 3 fucking calls a day and actually asking 5 people to come to a call, the likelihood of you doing that is it's not happening.
It's straight up not, right? And that plays so much into knowing where everyone is at in your pipeline, not just like long-term, like your actual pipeline, but your daily pipeline, right? Like the head count of how many people have actually responded, how close are they to a call, following up with them more as they get closer with the intent of, cool, I'm already at 2 for the day. Where's that 3rd or 4th person, right? And following up with them as soon as you possibly can.
Where are you seeing, you know, from the people who either didn't make it on our team that you've seen come through, or did make it and left, or even on other teams, right? Like, or with clients, like where are you seeing most of these guys, if you were to bucket them, where are they making most of the mistakes that are making them not top performers?
I'd say one is not following process, right? And there's a million reasons to not follow process. Someone sends you a big long message with a bunch of context in it. And I see this for clients and, you know, past team where they see a bunch of context and they get totally thrown off from setting, right? But one of the biggest lessons I had to learn, and probably one of the hardest ones when I first came on the team, was not getting caught up in the context. Like Chris's first 3 or 4 months working with me, the word context was like the devil to him, right?
He was like, I don't want to hear the fucking context, just give me the facts.
Right? And so I think what I learned...
That happened with someone else the other day too.
Right? So like the biggest thing that I think I learned through that is like, how do I actually find what the key words are in all the bullshit that they just sent across to me, right? They dropped a million things, but like, what are the actual key words? Like, cool, he's saying all this stuff, but like leads, calls, like, what is the key word that I can actually find in what they're saying so I can just focus on that?
Yeah, you can expand on that as opposed to, or like this whole thing, what is, like, it might say 1,000 words, but what does it actually say? Right? Like I was on as an example, I was on a call with someone the other day too, and they're like, so what's the biggest challenge? I'm like, 6 minutes later, I'm like, oh, so you mean you just don't have enough calls? They're like, yeah. I'm like, fuck.
Straight up, man. It's so funny because that's just like how the human mind works though, right? Like they're working through it themselves, giving you all this shit, but it's your job to figure out what are they actually saying.
Yeah, and that's in many cases like where the value in being on a sales call with someone is.
Yeah.
Right? Like they can actually help you discern what your actual issue is, right? Like if you think about it, like a lot of our sales calls for the prospect on that call, it's actually valuable to them. They get to really get clear on what's actually holding them back from where they want to be. And they get to get really clear on who they need to be in order to actually make that result, outcome, whatever they want, become a reality for themselves, for their family, for their future self, whatever the fuck it is that they want. And in many cases, I think it's a worthy profession to actually commit yourself to for an extended period of time or even a lifetime. Because even on the calls that you don't close on, you're still, if someone's not a fucking idiot, they can get a lot of value out of that call because they're going to get an insight that they would not have gotten anywhere else. And from people who are unwilling to give them the shitty version that is fucking not, so the shitty sugar-coated version that someone else in their life might, and makes it 50 times worse for them.
Yeah, I think sugarcoating things is just, it's a slippery slope, right? Of like, that was the main thing I think that was missing for me in my past program. I thought I was doing so well all the time, doing all the right things, but really wasn't. And I think that's sometimes where the value is found on the sales call is getting it straight. Other times it's things you didn't see that was missing inside of all the context up in your head.
Well, for a lot of people, it's just confusion.
Totally.
Right? They're just confused. Like, fuck, man, I've tried a million things. I don't know what's going on. Or like, what should I do next is kind of the question inside their unconscious.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think if I'm looking at buckets, I think that's the first one and one that I see a lot of. I think the second one is kind of back on what we were saying a minute ago, is just like the tenacity and the follow-up, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I'm not following up with someone or like with my daily pipeline, like once every like 2 hours, I'm shitting on myself big time, right? And I think that might scare a lot of people, that level of follow-up. But when you're finding different ways to follow up with people, bump the message, hey, the reason I ask is because XYZ might even have XYZ thing to send across, right? To position it in their best interest to reply, or even just throwing some humor in there, right? I think humor can go a long way, whether it's in follow-up, overcoming objections.
Please reply, or my Canadian friends are going to drink a whole bottle of maple syrup. Please.
Straight up, right? Like, but like that's for real, like a thing, right? Like when people are in a highly defensive state, like sometimes just sharing a little bit of a laugh with them can really decrease the tension in the room. Entirely, right? And I think that's not just a setting thing.
Yeah, I think that's a communication thing.
That's just a communication thing.
Yeah,
right. So
Jeremy Miner calls it like disarming, right?
Yeah,
disarming the prospect or whatever else that it is. Yeah, if you can, I think it was actually Frank Kern too, ages ago, and many people have said that I have been very similar to that. Where it's like if you can make them laugh, you can make them laugh all the way to opening their wallet.
Right? Straight up, right?
Right. Yeah, no, and the reason I just wanted to find that out too, because like you've been a poster boy within our team for people who are setters who are coming in or in the existing team right now. But you've also done the thing that they would want to do, which is go into closing and make like 5-figure months, if that makes sense too, right?
Yeah.
Which is what like most people who got biz-opt into online selling or remote closing or whatever else it is, they all got biz-opt into it. And like 3 people actually do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember when we were going through the conversation of like, because you'd seen like at least 4 closers come in, right? And I'm like, I reckon Kyle can do this. Like I'm convinced that I think Kyle can do this. And I'm like, we were recruiting, and I'm like, well, what's the worst case that happens if I just ask Kyle, right? I was in Toronto at the time, I remember. I was driving either to the gym or back to my apartment. And like, I'm just gonna give this guy a call and just see what he says.
Yeah.
And I guess like, obviously it worked out, but
yeah.
Sort of what was happening with you and where were your thoughts with that? Because when you came in, you'd never said you wanted to be a closer, right? We had to position the opportunity in a way that made you consider it at least, right?
For sure, right? So I think when we first had that conversation, I was still heavy in setting and you were in Toronto. That kind of just planted the seed, right? And I had never really come in looking for closing, because like the biggest part of what helped me scale my offer and what was missing before working with you was, you know, I didn't have enough calls. And I think that's a big problem for a lot of people in this industry. Right? Like most, right? So that was something I ended up getting really good at before I even joined. in joining, I was able to get really good at it, right? Because, but in going to sales, right? I think I had a lot of fears around that. I think the main one was, you know, do I have that bulldozer mentality to do this and get the real ask from someone, which is obviously getting the calls awesome and really hard for a lot of people in this industry. But I think in my mind, it was just this big scary thing, getting the sale, right? And making sure I was, you know, setting the expectations properly. I knew that had a lot of
According to
impact.
Ferris, you're not. So.
According to Ferris, I won't this week because he screwed me over this morning. But so I think that was like a big thing, right? But I think what was really awesome in that, and in the same way that I kind of experienced coming into set with you guys, was you guys made it really easy for me in the way that with setting, the lead flow was there, the processes were there. I had to follow them, right? Like same thing with what I was saying with clients being off of setting and team 2, it's not following the process and or getting caught up in the context, which pulls you off the process, and follow up, right?
Same fucking thing.
Right, it's the same thing. It's the same shit, right? So
it's the same skill, just expanded a little bit.
Yeah, so the same way that it was made easy for me on the setting side, it was on the closing side too. And I actually came in and did really well my first, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, you did.
Like surprised myself.
Yeah,
right?
You had a cracking first couple of months.
And I think that's heavily because, the lead flow was there. I knew how to get the calls on. They're really high quality calls. There's a solid sales process there for me to go in. Like I know when you were first plugging me in, you sent me a bunch of like sales process overview stuff, really understanding.
I broke down the playbook for you.
Each section, right? And I remember at that time I was like, the park's like beautiful in Vancouver, July. I was like sitting there really going through each training, right? Really understanding each part of the process.
I filmed it in Vancouver too.
Right? And I was going to say...
At Mom's house.
Yeah, at Mom's house. Right? So we had the initial conversation about me becoming a closer when you were still in Toronto. But when the actual conversation
Yeah. I remember because like, hey, when we're there, we can chat through this.
Yeah, so you guys came to Vancouver to visit me. We were at the Brown Social House there. That's where I was having all the fears around actually becoming the closer.
That was actually a big conversation because it was that, some fears around the friendship group you had at the same time. There was some fears around like where you were going on to the stuff as well. And I just remember like having the conversation where it was like, is it worth giving all this shit a shot for what you actually want in your life? And I don't know, kind of worked out. So. Yeah,
it kind of worked out. I mean, a few of the things on that list, like I've recently crossed off the new classic car, the jet ski, right? There's some financial stuff there too, but I think
that new place as well.
The new place,
the balls to move in with the missus, right? So there's like a lot of different things that have happened there too, right? And I'm like super proud of you for all that, just for reference.
Thanks,
right?
man.
Like,
and like the other big shift there was going from that mentality of I'm just a setter, which I think was something that I had, and now it's actually something that I really train our setters not to believe, right? Because I think there's an element there of, cool, Gronkowski was awesome, but who was passing the ball to him, right? And that was Tom Brady, right? That's a setter's job, right? He's meant to throw those dimes to the closer, right? So I think something I actually learned in going from setter to closer was there's no such thing as just a setter.
Not at all. I actually think in our recruitment document, it's called more than a setter.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm pretty sure it is called more than a setter because the purpose of it is like we don't hire with the intent of staying a setter. We hire with the intent of developing skills to become a closer.
Yeah.
And you're like the perfect example of that being true and happening because here you are, you've closed just shy of $1 million right now from someone who was doubting whether you could even do it.
Yeah, and I think something that also made it really easy is like I think one of the biggest fears I had in going into closing was do I really have that bulldozer in me to do this, right? But the process and everything made it super easy. But in doing that and seeing what was possible, right, it made me want to adopt more of these bulldozer, traits, assets, skills, right?
Give me an example to one for the people that don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I know that I know what you're saying, but what?
Like even just re-asking for the sale, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like. A lot of people ask for the sale.
I remember listening to like 8 calls in a row. I'm like, you asked once and then gave up. I'm like, it's because in the script, it only says it once. He's following the process perfectly. Oh, there's just no vision for what happens in a situation like that. Do you remember the analogy I gave you?
With shooting a bunch of shots at the goalie until the goalie gets tired out.
Yep.
Right? And I'm Canadian, right? So that just like hit home right with me. I'm like, Demko, keep it out, buddy. But it's gonna get in.
I think with sales, right? Like if you go back and listen to all the original calls of mine that you listened to that you use as examples for what selling sounded like when you close, maybe one I closed with one ask, right? Like you typically have to re-ask like 5 to fucking 20 times until someone will actually give you a cool, here's the go ahead, right? And I think so many people give up way too soon.
No, 100%. I think that's a huge thing, right? Someone, even if they try to objection handle it once, right? They might try to go for an objection handle. Oh, I tried objection handling. It didn't work. I still got the no, right? And I think something had a lot of fears around this going in, around objection handling, getting those no's, pretty much all stemmed from, fear of rejection, really, right? But the other part of that was I didn't want to sell in a way that, I felt like I was forcing the person to do it, right? Where I think there's...
Do you feel like you've done that with anyone?
No.
I don't feel like you have either. Not once.
It's figuring out like, cool, where's the belief that's stopping them from moving forward coming from, right? How do you actually reframe that to have them see that, no, this is actually the best thing for them possible. And I think just like having that and being able to mold it to my way of selling, right? Because I was like, you see closers in the industry, some are harder, some are softer, right? But I think what we've done really well here is even with our clients team, right? We take a process, but we mold it to the person's actual style of selling, so they don't feel like they're being incongruent with the way that they're selling.
As long as they know what they're fucking like, as long as they know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And what the outcome is, and they're following the process, you can fill in whatever color texture you want to use.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can color in whatever fucking way you want, as long as you know what you're looking for and you know where you're leading them to, and you're using the process in a way where like nothing's not getting ticked off.
100%. I think that was like the biggest thing in when I first started coming on as a closer and I was going through all those trainings, it was knowing exactly what to look for in each of those sections. So now it just becomes a box ticking process.
Yeah, and just making sure that you understand it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because like if you can understand it, you can actually put yourself in a position where you can, well, one, know that the prospect on the other side is going to get the help that they need when they're here with us.
Yeah.
But number two, that you know that we can actually solve that fucking problem for them too. Yeah. Did you think you'd get to 900 grand in sales?
It was hard to believe at the time, in all honesty. And I think at that time I was just even struggling to think how I could get to, 50 or 100 grand in sales. I wasn't even thinking about $1 million. Whereas now I'm thinking about how do I get to 333K a month?
Which is like
20 to 30 grand in commissions.
It's like somewhere between 6 and 12 months away to really make that happen.
Realistically.
I think there'll be different things that will help contribute to that. But dude, you are well on your way to doing that. It's been a really cool journey. It's still the beginning, which is the really cool thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing more, man. I think the only other thing that I want to ask is like, if you did have wisdom for existing team coming in, existing clients, or clients who are coming in to leave them with, what are like the one or two things, if you were to reflect back and look at where you were, right? Never forgetting where you came from. What are the 2 or 3 things that you think that you could share back and give to wisdom if it was the last thing you could share with these guys?
I think the first is, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, consequential thinking at all times, right? Like what happens if I don't do the thing that I know that I need to do, right? That goes into, being a sales savage, being a metal seller, outworking the bad days, right? And I think on the other side of that, it's like not giving a shit about what anyone thinks in you doing that. That's what goes into like, following up with people every 1 to 2 hours, right? And even more so as the day goes on or as they get closer to the whole, i.e. being a call or a sale, not really caring about what other people may think, but just doing the things that you need to do regardless of. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing that we didn't really touch on a ton today was like really up-leveling the people around you, right? And we were talking about this on the other podcast with Ferris earlier. I think we touched on it conversation that we had in Vancouver, right? But it's knowing, who do you actually want to have in your inner circle, who's the acquaintances and who's the people that, are probably holding you back more than they're propelling you forward. It doesn't mean there needs to be any bad blood, but it means you want to keep the people in your inner circle, people that are really going to level you up in skills, right? Whether that's bringing in mentors, whether that's team, making sure it's the right people to give you the skills and the systems that you actually need moving forward.
Perspective. Fucking things that are going to be arguably motivating, right? Like, I think that's a good way to put it too, right? Because I think that we can go so far by ourselves, but we can go a shitload further if we have someone bring out the full potential in us too, right? Because you guys do the same for me too, right? Like I have to constantly level myself up and who I am to be able to provide what I can for the rest of the team to be able to bring it all together as well. Like, that doesn't get easier because you guys get better. It gets harder for me.
Yeah. Right. And I love, the thing that you took me through in Vancouver where you've got I might be butchering this, but you've got the kingdom, which is the inner circle.
Yeah.
Right. You've got the inner circle outside of that, and then you've got the acquaintance. And the interesting thing is that's not just for all areas of life. In one area of life, someone might be in the acquaintance section, but in another area of your life, they might be right inside the kingdom, right? Based on
the relationship, the context,
the context. their perspectives and how they align with yours in that particular area of life. So I think there's a lot that goes into that, right?
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation too, right? It's just discerning who and it's essentially about healthy boundaries.
100%.
Right, knowing who should have insight and input to your life, and who you should keep at arm's length, even if it's just emotionally, right? Because not everyone should have power over you, right? Not everyone should have power over you. Realistically, only you should have power over you, and you get to choose whose perspective you take. You get to choose whose perspective you take on, and you also get to choose who you allow into a point where you will take their perspective on in a way that will change or influence your behavior, right? And I think too many people get caught in this, everyone gets to tell me who I am, but only you should.
100%. Even the people in your kingdom, they can say things, but ultimately, you're the king and you get to make the final say.
Yeah, supposing that you allow that to be the case.
100%. So I think that's a big one as well. I think the other thing is just don't let your fears hold you back, right? Whether it's fear that you can't be the person, or with me going from setter to closer, just see what do you need to make that next thing possible, right? Mm-hmm. Don't write it off so quickly.
I mean, what if it did work out?
What if it did work
out? Dude, thank you so much for doing this. It won't be the last time we do this. I am really, 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 really grateful for everything we've been through so far. Shitload more to do. Job is definitely not done.
Not done at all.
And I'm excited to see whoever's watching here get an opportunity to speak to Carl, be it on a call, be it in the program, be it on the team, be it at an event we have, or just be it in his own personal life when he's at the pub, because he loves a beer too, right?
Happy dads if we're in the US.
Happy dads are from the US. It's a different drink. If you do see Carl, give him a happy dad. He'll definitely drink it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Any last words of wisdom for the people watching?
Sell the metal.
Thank you guys. If you guys do want to speak to Carl, find out how he can change your fucking life as well, book in for a call below, and he'll be able to help you guys work out what's not working, help you guys scale up, and he'll help you come and speak to me and learn how great this Australian accent is, and we can help you teach that as well. Thanks guys. Speak to you soon.
Peace.